Hello, this is Dan from Pale Wizard Records. Our YouTube channel is generally just me and my label mate Tim chatting about music and generally being grumpy old men. But yes, we also run a record label and I am a professional musician. Now, as well as being a musician and running a label, I also run a professional music studio, and I have done so for about 15 years now. The reason I'm telling you this is not to blow my own trumpet, but to give you some context on the topic we're going to be looking at today. So, recently, there's been a fair amount of controversy in the online vocal coaching world, believe it or not. For those not aware, there's a chap in the US called Ken Tamplin, and he runs his own vocal coaching academy and has done so very successfully for many years. So Ken was a professional recording artist himself, and so he brings much of his experience to his students. I have no opinion on his coaching skills or his own vocal skills, except to say that I've heard some of his musical output, and although it's not my cup of tea, he can clearly sing very well. And I have heard from some of his genuine students who were very complimentary about his tuition. So his tagline for all his videos is "The proof is in the singing," which would suggest that Ken is an advocate for honesty and real results, as am I. And yes, I have watched a few of his videos in the past. Specifically, some years back, I was keen to try and develop a fry vocal technique to enable me to do some of the more high-pitched, high-octane vocals, similar to what Chris Cornell used to do. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get my head around it, and no matter what I tried, watching videos by Ken and other YouTube coaches, it wasn't happening. I'm very much of the opinion now that I should just accept my vocal limitations and express myself as best as I can using the voice I have, all its characteristics and all its flaws. Now, that's not a criticism of Ken or his academy. It just didn't work for me. But I've enjoyed some of Ken's videos over the years. I have had vocal lessons in the past. I saw a lovely classical voice teacher in the city I live in, Bath, for a while, and that helped enormously, and it gave me loads of confidence. So by all means, I thoroughly recommend seeking help if you want to improve any skills in your life. So now I've laid the groundwork, so let's get to the meat of the controversy. So Ken recently got his band back together, who I believe have been performing since the 80s, early 90s, something like that. And one of their performances was professionally filmed and recorded and uploaded to YouTube. So this came up as a recommended video on YouTube for me, so I naturally clicked on it, as I specifically wanted to see how his vocals held up live. I'm a singer, this is what singers do. We watch other singers and we're really judgmental about each other. But in the best way, we can empathise with other singers. There are always times when the voice just doesn't do what you want it to do. We have off nights, we get colds, coughs. It is a constant struggle, and it can be quite stressful being a singer. And let me say this straight away, I wasn't familiar with Ken's music, so admittedly I had nothing to compare the live vocals to. But within a few minutes it was obvious to me that something wasn't right. Every time, or at least almost every time, when he goes for the high notes in the higher register, it's not his live voice. At first, I assumed that what happened is that when the live video was being edited by Ken or someone else, they had substituted the live vocal for a studio vocal. So you might be asking, how did I know that this wasn't a live vocal? So, okay, number one, his voice isn't moving in time. Sounds obvious, but you'll notice there's so many occasions, if you do watch it, where it's clear that his mouth movements don't match the audio, the camera cuts away to another angle. Number two, and this is a sure fire sign that someone's miming, but when someone lip syncs, and this always happens, singers tend to overemphasize the mouth movements, and he does this a lot. So when you're naturally singing, actually singing live, you're not obviously thinking so much about your mouth movements, but when you're miming, it's like you overdo it. It's like an overcorrection. Reason number 3, I know some of these vocals are not live, is because some of the higher vocals, they come in before he's even had a chance to take a breath from the line before. So because we're human, we need to breathe. In the studio, you can like drop in or cut in for certain lines, which means you don't need to take a breath in the studio, but singing live is a completely different ball game. But number 4, and the most obvious telltale sign that this was not a live vocal, the entire sound of the voice changes. He is singing some parts live, mostly the lower register stuff, and he is singing well. I'm not, not a criticism, but when he goes into the higher pitched, higher ranged, the kind of fry vocal, most of that is lip synced. The entire sound changes. What I mean by that is there's a huge difference between a live vocal sound and a studio vocal sound. So in the studio we can use things like outboard compression and effects and EQs because the signal is isolated. Generally you'd record the voice separate from the music. In a live setting, that microphone's going to be picking up loads of ambience from the stage, such as the drums behind him, the guitars. Plus, the microphone that you use live is not in any way similar to the type of microphone that you'd use in the studio. And yes, I know that you can use compression on live vocals, and I've seen people commenting on this. People saying, "Oh, I run a studio. I'm this, I'm that, and I know what I'm talking about." And Ken's definitely doing this live. I think those people are complete trolls, because if they had any idea what they're talking about, they'd know that that's complete bollocks. So yeah, I know you can use compression on live vocals, but trust me on this, the actual vocal sound completely changes on those bits. And yes, he's doing some of it live, certainly the lower down bits, and I'm not slagging off his voice, but the fact remains that there's huge portions of this live performance which there is no live vocal. So why don't I play you a clip of the performance now, and I'll point out every time it's a live vocal or it's a pre-recorded vocal, and see if you can hear it too.
Living on a borderline. You remember this? Oh, I know it's a matter of time when bleeding heart. As it comes, oh Lord, you keep me holding on. Don't really care what people say, no way. Know where I'm going, I found my way. And I have a satisfaction, but straight and narrow road. It's no emotional reaction. I'm gonna reap what I sow, 'cause I
And I know I'm going to get people commenting on this video saying that I don't know what I'm talking about and it's all nonsense. I do run a studio. I mean, I'm sat in one of our live rooms, our control rooms just through there. I've run this for 15 years. We've recorded hundreds of albums by hundreds of bands. We do know what we're talking about. But I think even people who know nothing about the technical aspects of music and recording will be able to hear the difference in that video I just played. And remember, this is the same guy that says the proof is in the singing. Well, Ken, if that was true, shouldn't you be a little bit more honest about this live performance? Anyway, I left a comment basically asking, in a calm and respectful way, if this was a case of overdubbing after the fact, or was he lip syncing those sections? I wasn't trying to start an argument or get involved in cancel culture or any of that nonsense, but my comment on Ken's channel was deleted almost immediately, so make of that what you will. Now, funnily enough, almost immediately after I clicked away from that video, another video was suggested to me by the YouTube algorithm. It does that, doesn't it? And this was by a chap called Phil, who runs the Wings of Pegasus YouTube channel. And I've watched loads of Phil's videos before, and he comes across as a lovely chap, and And his main gripe over the years, it seems to me, has been exposing the use of pitch correction in studios, and also the overuse of pitch correction on past live performances to kind of airbrush history, that kind of thing. And spoiler alert for those who don't know, the vast majority of live music that is uploaded today has been messed with to some extent. For instance, Phil recently did a fantastic and really depressing video showing how they've used pitch correction on the voice of Freddie Mercury on a recent Queen remix. It's totally, absolutely shocking abuse of someone's legacy to do that, in my opinion. What Phil does is he scientifically analyses the actual vocals from performances, and you can physically see and hear where something has been faked or tuned or overdubbed, lip-synced. It's interesting stuff. He uses this pitch correction software. It's well known within the industry, all this kind of stuff. But most importantly, what Phil does is factual. It's critical. It isn't about espousing an opinion. Phil never does give an opinion, really. He's just pointing out the truth, and that's something I deeply respect. But sticking to the point, Phil had been asked by someone just like me to look at this live performance by Ken's band. So I strongly suggest going and having a look at Phil's original video. Here's a small clip.
That's what I call them in other videos, where you have things that look similar on one side to the other side. So what I'm going to do now is probably make it bigger on screen so you guys can see more clearly. So I've also got rid of the background so you guys can see it a little bit more clearly. And I'm just going to move these things around a little bit because, as I've said in other videos about when you get an echo or something that looks similar, nothing should match up here, especially given the ambient noise we've got going on. But if we're looking at this section, certainly this looks very, very close indeed. And if we start to kind of move things up and put one over the top of the other, you'll see how we're starting to line up, and I can probably get this a little bit closer. This is definitely something that is indicative of the same audio, especially when we start lining up this closely. I'm just going to keep moving it forward because, I mean, yeah, this kind of data, I mean, this is really good because we've got a held note. And if I'm now moving this off to the side here, and I mean, this is, yeah, where it gets a little bit crazy because I can almost line these up perfectly, but I'll move it underneath so you start to get maybe a little bit more of an appreciation of how things start to look similar.
So in Phil's video, you can clearly see that there are portions of this performance where Ken is miming to the studio vocal. That's a fact. This is not opinion. That is as clear as day. It's a fact. End of. Now, you can do with that fact whatever you want, but that's a fact. So let's just bear that in mind, all right? Phil got bombarded with comments from trolls and Ken's fans, who, by the way, do seem to be very cult-like in the way they respond. And all of the negative comments on Ken's videos kept getting deleted almost as quickly as they were made. Other YouTubers did come to Phil's defense. And anyone with a brain or an ounce of studio knowledge knows the truth in this situation. But Ken and his followers, it seems like they're trying to gaslight the community because they're claiming that we are the trolls and we are simply responsible for cancel culture, the clickbait generation, blah, blah, blah. Now listen, I don't want anyone to be cancelled. I don't want anyone to harass Ken or Phil or anyone. I have no reason to doubt the talent of Ken or his vocal academy. If you've paid money to Ken and you enjoy his lessons, that's great. But here's the thing. Ken is telling you that the proof is in the singing. What he should also be telling you, if you're an aspiring singer, is that the voice, it ages, it changes. By claiming that this video is 100% live, he's giving you, a potential student of his, an unrealistic representation of the human voice. He's miming to songs that he sang in a studio 35 years ago. And miraculously, his voice sounds exactly the same as it did then. That can't happen. It doesn't happen. It's impossible. Your voice ages. It changes. I can show you vocals that I recorded 9 years ago that sound different to my voice now. We age, we change. It's a sad reality that we all have to contend with. And I know there will come a time when I have to ask the band I'm in to start playing the songs down a step or two. Or maybe I should just retire from live performance. I won't be able to do it forever, I know that. We have to adapt our performances accordingly. And I think that's just generally good advice to be giving to someone who wants to learn to sing. You know, giving them a realistic expectation of what they can do with their voice, their skill. I mean, we're constantly telling our children not to be brainwashed by the media, not to accept the beauty standards that are forced upon the young these days by the fashion industry and the media. Well, the same logic should be applied to music and the arts in general. Stop lying to people that everything is perfect, because life isn't perfect. And every day is different, isn't it? Every day is a different challenge. And I've got a gig tonight and I woke up with a sore throat. Part of that's probably psychological, because I know I've got a gig coming up. But I know tonight is probably not going to be my best performance. It's just the way it is. Now, if Ken had come out and said, yep, I did lip sync some of the performance, I can't hit those notes anymore, and I wanted to give the fans the full experience, so I mimed those bits. In retrospect, this was a mistake and I should have sang more within my range, or perhaps it would have been better to play the songs down a couple of keys so it's better suited to my voice now. Or even if he just said, I had a chest infection, I had a cold, so I had to cheat. I'm really sorry, guys. See, if he had said that, this would have all been sorted by now. Fair enough. Plus, we all know the majority of legacy performers are doing this now, don't we? But unfortunately, no. Ken didn't swallow his pride and come clean. Instead, he uploaded a video to address the issue, but I don't think he really addresses anything. So let's watch the video now, and I'll butt in when I've got something to say.
Hey everybody, Ken Tamplin from Ken Tamplin Vocal Academy, where the proof is in the singing. Some of you may not know that I just did a live performance with my bands Shout and Tamplin this past August in Ohio. And frankly,
that bit was mimed. Definitely. You can tell from the sound of the vocal. That was not live.
I think we killed it. Maybe we killed it so good that we actually had people coming to me and saying, we think you lip-synced the show. And it's funny because we had a gob of KTVA advocates rushing to my rescue.
ATVA advocates. So that's what he calls them. The trolls who scour the internet looking for any criticism of Ken and shoot it down. The ATVA advocates. Oh, sorry, KTVA. Just like a weird cult, isn't it?
To go line by line to prove how different the live performance was from the studio recordings. In fact, one guy actually said that he identified over 100 places in a 70-minute set of how different the live performance was compared to studio performances. Now,
No, Ken, that's bollocks, right? We know there's loads of differences. No one's saying that you mimed the whole thing. We're not saying that. You know we're not saying that. We know, I've already said, and Phil said, there's most of the lower range vocals. Yes, you did it. We're not having a go at you for that. But what you're doing here, you're trying to cloud the issue. You're introducing more nonsense into the debate. Stick to the point, Ken. It's that is not an argument. You know, because someone farted in the audience. That wasn't on the original studio recording. What a ridiculous thing to say.
Now, Unfortunately, these websites decided to go ahead and delete everybody's comments because it didn't sell the narrative that they wanted to get more views.
No. This is gaslighting what you're doing here, Ken. You, or whoever runs your YouTube page, you were deleting the comments. I put one on your video and you deleted it within about a minute. Then I'd watch other comments coming up and then they disappear. No one, I don't think anyone's deleting comments from other people's videos. I haven't noticed that at all. It's your videos where the only person who can delete comments on a video that you uploaded is you or the person who manages your YouTube channel. You're talking bollocks here, Ken. Right? Admit it. You've been ruthless with the editing button and the delete button on this. Right? You're accusing us of what you do. This is classic gaslighting.
More clicks. Now let me explain this. That's because social media has become one giant tabloid magazine. Now, it's not really their fault. I'm going to get into that in a minute because the algorithms actually play into this. So the more outrageous you can be, the more sensationalistic you can be, fraud, exposed, it's over, all these different things that they use, these tactics. They do it for views. Like I said, I don't really even blame these.
No. Again, what you're doing now is you're trying to cloud the issue. You're obfuscating the actual debate, the actual thing that Phil from Wings of Pegasus was saying. You're bringing in other things now to basically let's turn the conversation, let's steer it somewhere else. This is what politicians do. It infuriates me. It's like filibustering, No, we're not talking about fake news and the media and cancel culture. No. And I don't think Phil certainly wasn't trying to get you cancelled. It was very respectful the way he did his video. And again, no one's criticising your voice or criticising your vocal academy. Potentially, we're criticising your decision to use some studio vocals in a live environment and then basically deny any knowledge of that ever happening. You're doubling down on something that we know categorically is a lip sync. So bringing in all this stuff about, algorithms and stuff. Come on, mate.
Like I said, I don't really even blame these guys because they're incentivized to do this, and the algorithms are incentivized to do this so that they can get more views and make more money. This is not about investigative reporting, okay?
No. If you watch Phil's video, Wings of Pegasus, it is literally investigative reporting. It's scientific even. There's nothing sensationalistic about what Phil did. He literally took the vocal from the live video, extracted the vocal, put it into his pitch monitoring software, and then he got the same vocal from the original track, which I think he said came out in 1989 or around then. Put the two vocals on top of each other. They lined up, so you could say at the very least that they were done to the exact same tempo, because otherwise they wouldn't line up. So you could say, well, the band is definitely playing to a click track. The drummer's playing to a click track. But if you listen to the video, there's tons of stuff going on in the backing tracks. There's probably loads of guitars. I think all the backing vocals are on the backing track. I'm not even sure what is coming out live, to be honest. I think the drummer's playing live, to be fair. But my point is, he took those original things and put them on top of each other, and miraculously, it's the exact same shape. Now, that cannot happen. This is, when people say, oh, he's just such a good singer that no, you don't understand. You can't do that. I've recorded vocals on about 12 different albums. Okay, we've got a new one coming out next month, and I will sometimes double or triple track the vocals I'm doing, and you'll be able to see the waveform on the screen. And it's quite, if I'm double tracking or triple tracking my vocal, it's quite handy to watch that waveform because it kind of gives me a visual representation of where I should be taking a breath, where I should be tailing off. Certainly, if a word finishes in like a sibilanty noise, like a s or a t, you want to be able to cut it, at the right point. And also, what you sometimes do is you'll decide on what is the lead vocal. That'll be in the middle, and then if it's a triple track, the one above and on top, you might slice off the ends so there's not any consonants which are going at the end. Does that make sense? My point being, it's impossible, no matter how good you are at singing, it's impossible to, even when you're in the studio doing it 20 seconds after the last take, it's not going to be the same. And you put it on a pitch monitoring piece of software, there's so many differences. And the lines might cross because it's going up and down the scales, isn't it? But it'll never be the same. It's impossible. Right? It's impossible for me to do that. Like I said, 10 seconds apart. Ken is suggesting that he can just do the same vocal 35 years apart. And he can do it exactly the same as he did on the album. Ken, you're talking complete bollocks. Alright? I'm sorry, that's bollocks.
Getting back to my KTVA advocates, when the post showed clearly how many different places there were that I sang live, or that were different from the live to the studio recordings, a lot of people backed up and said, okay, well, wait a minute. Maybe you didn't lip sync the show after all.
No, that's not what happened, is it? Right? Again, we clearly, everybody who was criticising this clearly pointed out where it is the studio vocal and where it's your vocal, your live vocal. Okay? So, again, you're trying to cloud the argument by introducing all this other crap.
But you used backing tracks. I'm like, yeah, I did use backing tracks. In fact, a lot of bands use it. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I would have loved to have had a 60-piece choir singing all.
I just noticed that he keeps putting up in speech marks at the bottom of the video. He keeps what he's just said. Yeah, I did use backing tracks. Ken Tamplin, like it's some kind of poignant phrase that's going to be spoken about in hushed tones in 100 years' time. When they're looking at books of famous quotes from famous people. Yes, I did use backing tracks, said Ken Tamplin in 2024. Wise words, wise words. And sorry, no one's talking about the backing tracks, Ken. Again, and you clearly are really, using a lot of backing tracks, right? And I don't like backing tracks. I can see why in some bands it's necessary if you've got strings or synths or something that you can't recreate with an instrument live. I can see, like piano. Like for instance, we've got a track on our new album that's got a piano bit. We're trying to figure out how we'll do that. Maybe our second guitarist can have a little electronic piano by his mic stand. It might be that we come up with some kind of sample just for that bit because we don't have a live piano player. So I can understand why backing tracks are used. We've never used them. The only thing we've ever done is use like samples for intros to songs, which is just triggered. It's not on any kind of metronome or click track or anything like that. I'm personally not a fan of backing tracks, but that's not the point. We're not criticising you for using backing tracks. I didn't see anyone criticising you for using backing tracks. Again, you're introducing something else into this argument that doesn't need to be introduced. You're filibustering, you're obfuscating, you're gaslighting.
You had a 60-piece choir singing all the anthemic stuff that we do as a big anthemic band. But let me do a quick Google search. This is a short list of who either has used backing tracks or are currently using backing tracks. Are you ready? Check this out. Pink Floyd, Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Kiss, Shinedown, Nightwish, U2, Dream Theater, Coldplay, Van Halen, The Who, Paul McCartney, Rolling Stones, Aerosmith, even Pavarotti. I mean, crazy stuff. I could go on.
You sound like a politician, Ken. This is what politicians do. They say to a politician, "Oh, Mr. Johnson, can you tell us why inflation has gone up 6%?" Then he'll give you a list of 20 other things other than the question they've asked him, just to cloud the argument. and filibuster his way to the end so he doesn't actually have to answer the question.
Crazy stuff. I could go on and on with Houston, and, it's endless. I think I'm in pretty good company because it's a lot more practical to do that now than to try to hire a bunch of singers. And we only had 3 days to rehearse 13 very, very difficult.
Why did you need to put that in as a quote at the bottom? We only have 3 days to rehearse, says Ken Tamplin, 2024. That's weird.
Metal songs. We chose the instrumentation, but it is me singing. Now, I want to say something else. Beyond Ken Tamplin Vocal Academy, we must become critical thinkers. This goes far beyond some puny little thing in KTVA that I'm some small cog in the wheel of what's really going on here. What's going on here is that if we're not critical thinkers...
What's going on here is you're the problem. Okay? I know I've been abusing you for all these years, but it's really your fault that I'm abusing you.
We're going to let all of the news media do our thinking for us.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
All of the political ad campaigns do our thinking for us. I mean, this is endless. It's pretty much all media now. I think pretty much all of true, genuine investigative reporting or journalism has just gone in the toilet, and it's all about getting views.
Yeah, well, you've just proved that, haven't you, Ken? You've basically just created a political ad which doesn't answer the question. Right? You're complaining about this, but you're doing it. Right? This feels like gaslighting. You're accusing us of what you did.
And clickbait and outrageous things. So I also recognize that I'm one of the few vocal coaches on the internet that actually sings himself and has students singing. In fact, we have over 1,800 videos out there. I'd love to see other people come up to the table and see what they're actually doing instead of just, clickbaiting people into whatever they want to get for their views. And I say this because I know it leaves me vulnerable and susceptible to a lot of criticism, and I'm willing to accept that. But I will say this for all of the lip sync accusers out there. Hey! Now, it's not like I can pull Jiminy Cricket out of my pocket to do that for me. That's
What does that mean? I mean, what does that prove? Yeah, we know you can sing, Ken, right? But he knows as well as anyone that doing vocals live is completely different than in a controlled environment. And then to say it's not like I can pull Jiminy Cricket out of my pocket, I don't get that. I'm struggling to understand how, because his advocates, his fans, they seem to be very sycophantic, and I'm assuming that was for them, that kind of weird thing you just did. Yeah! What the fuck was that about? I don't know what's that supposed to prove, Ken. That you doing that hasn't changed anything. I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself now.
That's really me singing. And what I'm going to suggest to you is you need to put on your critical hat, put the two shows side by side, and evaluate it yourself.
We did. We literally did that. Thankfully, we have someone like Phil from Wings of Pegasus who didn't just do that. He actually analysed the vocals in a scientific, critical way. We've done that. You're telling us, well, it wasn't scientific and it wasn't critical enough. I think maybe it's better if you just believe me. I'm a better source of information than the person who's criticising me.
Don't let someone do your thinking for you, whether it's KTVA, the general news media, politics, or whatever. Start thinking for yourself. Ken Tamplin Vocal Academy, where the proof is still in the singing. Never
So yeah, Ken. Honestly, I wish nothing but success for you, and I've nothing to gain from criticising you. And I'm not doing this video for likes or clicks, because no one watches our channel anyway. This is just an excuse for me and my friend Tim just to shoot the breeze every now and then and just chat about music and stuff. But this whole thing did annoy me, because part of my role running a studio and a label is I do count myself as a bit of a mentor, especially to younger musicians or musicians starting out on their path. Because I'm at the forefront of it. Our local music scene has been really struggling. There's not many bands coming out, and there's so few venues where we are now, and they keep closing, and business is awful. And it's the Ed Sheeran effect. Everyone wants to be Ed Sheeran or Billie Eilish, but no one wants to be in a band, and no one wants to get out there and play gigs and socialise with people. And there's a whole thing from the COVID, and young people just don't seem to want to coalesce around other young people and work towards a shared ideal. And I hope I'm getting across the point that I want to be very encouraging to the next generation, and I want to be realistic and give them realistic expectations, because I've seen what happens when bands or singers or guitarists, they get into a band with an unrealistic expectation. They think they're going to be shit hot on the first gig, right? I bore myself by saying this, but I say it every time. To advice to new bands, the truth is, when you start, you're likely going to be shit. And if you keep rehearsing once or twice a week, rehearse as well as you can, in 6 months' time, you'll be really well rehearsed shit. You'll still be shit, but you'll be well rehearsed shit. And then maybe another 6 months from then, you might actually be all right. And you know this, Ken, what you're doing is you're shaving off the edges, aren't you? You can just improving fractional things every time, maybe just sharpen up a song, make the beginnings and the tops and the tails better. Your vocalist starts to get better pitch. Your guitarist is remembering to use a tuner. Your songwriting gets better, and the way you structure songs, the way you structure your gigs, all that kind of thing. You want to give them the expectation, well, no expectations, don't you? You want them to go in with low expectations, so then their expectations get exceeded, and then what they'll want to do is carry on. They'll want to do the next gig, and they'll want to get better. They're not expecting to be the finished article straight away, because that is not realistic. This is the thing that really grinded my gears with I was willing to let it go until you put up that apology video. Well, it's not an apology, is it? You've doubled down on it. You're lying. And I don't like that. I think this could have all gone away if you'd just been humble and just, admitted it and moved on. Use it as an educational tool about how the voice ages, how we age, how we cope with that, how we change the way that we perform, or the way we write songs. You could look at all of the pop stars and rock stars of the last 30 years and see how their voice changed throughout their career. We know Johnny Cash sounded completely different at 70 years old than he did at 30 years old. And that's great, isn't it? I just really value integrity and honesty when it comes to music, especially from those who are in a position to educate and train other people at a particular skill. There's no hard feelings here, Ken, and I'm not trying to cancel you. I'm not trying to ruin your career or any of this nonsense. I just want some honesty. I just wish you'd take this one on the chin and suck it up. And like I said, I've watched your videos in the past. I know you're a good singer, and I've got no reason to believe you're not a good vocal coach. I'm sure you're a very good vocal coach. Anyway, that was my 2 cents on this whole affair. I'm sure many of you don't even know what I'm talking about, or weren't even aware that there were these YouTube vocal coaches. But I do highly recommend checking out the Wings of Pegasus YouTube channel, because Phil does a really good job. He's a musician as well, so he does his own original music, and he's still fighting the good fight. But he does a really good job at highlighting when people are cheating in a live environment. He did a really interesting one on the Celine Dion performance at the recent Olympics, which really ruffled a few feathers, but sadly it's true. She mimed. You know, you can get all upset about it and shout and scream at Phil, but all Phil's doing is showing you the truth. Anyway, my name's Dan from Pale Wizard. Thanks for watching. See you next time.